And so the German lines are broken. It's the perfect time to advance, and Haig asks the British government to be allowed to launch another attack to finish the Germans off. But Lloyd George still doesn't trust Haig and refuses. He wouldn't give Haig permission to attack for another 1.5 months. And to make sure that he couldn't, he starved the British Expeditionary Force of ammunition to stop them from stockpiling shells. The German army rally and refortify, and the chance is lost. On the 2nd of June, the French finally tell Haig that their army has collapsed. They tell Haig that between the Germans and Paris, there are only around 40,000 French troops that can be relied upon, which is probably an exaggeration of how bad the situation actually was. But it's the crisis moment of the war. If the Germans knew, then they would attack with divisions taken from the Eastern Front, where the Russian forces were now starting to rapidly unravel, and they would win the war in 1917. There are still no American troops in Europe. Italy and Russia are losing. France has collapsed. The Americans have yet to arrive. Effectively, Britain is alone, and it must never let the German army realise how close it is to final victory. The German army must be kept busy. The British must attack and attack again and continue to attack, alone and unaided, until the French army can recover and an American army can arrive. The first American troops will start to trickle into Europe on the 25th of June. Over in the east, there is the last of the Russian attacks, the Kerensky offensive. On the 1st of July, the Russians launch their last attack of the war. It's an absolute disaster. The Russian attack is soon stopped, and the Russian army is actually pushed back, which, considering their attacking, is a real achievement, pushed back 150 miles. By the time the battle halts on the 23rd of July, Russian troops are refusing to fight. In an effort to prop up morale, the Russian General Staff had sent in the Women's Death Battalion, a battalion entirely made up of women, to try and shame the men into fighting. But even that doesn't work. They will now only fight the Germans one more time at the Battle of Riga in September, when even then Russian units will refuse to fight and turn and run away from the Germans. The Russian army is now finished. They had fought for the Tsar, but they won't fight for Kerensky's government. The British must bring forward any plan they have for an attack, as the situation is now worsening by the day. But now the British have their plan. Now they can choose where to attack. They will attack at Ypres, and Haig chooses Gough, a bold cavalry general, for the job. He advises Gough to prepare to wear the German army down, and then once the German army has been worn down, to break through. But Gough ignores this and plans to break through immediately at Ypres. Now Gough also ignores Haig's advice to attack along the right flank of Ypres. His plan is to advance 6,000 yards a day on the first and second day, and then break out on the third. The British 1st Division is also to be taken out of the line to train to launch an amphibious assault, a D-Day style landing on the Belgian coast with specially built landing craft and tanks designed to cross sea walls. A small number of French troops will fight beside the British, but only a tiny number. On the 31st of July, the battle begins, the Battle of Pilkem Ridge. The Guards push across the Yser Canal, crossing it on a bridge made of empty petrol tins. Despite the canal, some British units advance 2.5 miles, and on average, the British advance 3,000 yards. Brilliant, but only half what General Gough had hoped for. Fighting is fierce, with the Germans counter-attacking every British advance ferociously. But the first day of what will become known as Passchendaele had been a success, and the ridge of Pilkham Ridge is captured. That night, however, the rains start to fall, and it will be the wettest summer of the 20th century. Tanks can't move through the mud. Men will famously drown in the mud. The images of men wading through mud to get at their enemy comes from this battle. On the 2nd of August, the attack is halted due to the weather. There's minor fighting on the 12th of August, but the rain day after day after day keeps falling. But the British can't delay for long. Remember, they must keep this German army occupied. And on the 16th of August, the battle restarts. But now the landscape has completely changed. But the British army is committed. Haig asks about the condition of the French army and is told the French are still in no position to fight. And so from the 16th to the 18th of August, you have the battles of Langemarck and Hill 70. General Gough has not adapted well to the mud. British losses are huge and progress forward is slight as General Gough fails to get Fifth Army moving again. But the Canadians do succeed in taking Hill 70, fighting off 5 German divisions and inflicting heavy losses upon the German army. The German army considers the battle for Hill 70 to be a costly defeat. Some British tanks managed to advance along the road and captured some important German bunkers, but the Germans continued to counterattack fiercely in the battle. Both sides are being bled in the mud, and Haig increasingly tried to give General Gough some advice to try and change how Gough was fighting, but it's clear that Gough is not up to the job. The British have suffered 70,000 casualties, and Haig sacks Gough and calls for the general who had done so well at Messines Ridge, calling for Plumer. Plumer asks for a 3-week pause to reorganise the army, and with the losses so high, Haig has no choice but to agree. During this pause, the ground dries out slightly, but only slightly. The French are slowly starting to recover, and on the 20th of August, the French begin a series of very small attacks at Verdun, which would continue on and off until the 9th of September, taking 10,000 German prisoners. The battle was marked by the widespread use of the new poison gas, mustard gas.